Thanks to my addiction to the stories regarding true and fake heiresses, I'm afflicted with strong paranoia that everyone is out there to get me. For some reason, I keep thinking that I'm a fake heiress who will eventually get kicked out of my home. In order to avoid getting set up, I stay on my guard every day. Not only do I hire some people to act as the actual heiresses and visit my home from time to time, but I also have them put on performances with me. On the day I'm done rehearsing all of the web novel tropes, a pure and innocent young woman comes knocking on the door. As she shows the pendant and a paternity test report, she starts crying sadly. "Mom, Dad, I'm your actual daughter." My parents just nod thoughtfully. The actress who's playing this role today is quite talented. The girl's innocent, pitiful expression froze on her face as she paused in disbelief. "Dad, Mom, what are you saying? I'm your biological daughter." She hurriedly held out the DNA test report and a family heirloom locket in front of them, trying to prove her identity. "Look, this is the evidence." Suddenly, there was live stream around her. What's going on? Shouldn't her parents be moved to tears and pull her into a hug? At that moment, I wrapped up my final scene and stepped out of the room. The first thing I saw was my mother staring intently at the girl's features, tracing every detail on her face again and again. The comment section didn't even try to hide its hostility toward me. Once her mom recognizes the real daughter by her looks, "You're done for, you fake." Our scheming, ruthless heroine is smart, and with her parents backing her, she'll destroy you in no time. Mom suddenly turned to look at me. Under the girl's hopeful gaze, she called out eagerly, "Faye, from what I can see, this girl has the best acting skills and is the most dedicated." She even prepared her own props. "You won't go wrong partnering with her." The girl glanced at them, then down at the items in her own hands. Her expression darkened instantly. I cleared my throat, feeling a little awkward. "Mom, I don't think she's one of the actresses I brought in." That caught both my parents off guard as they sat on the couch. "What? She's not? Then, who is she?" With everyone's attention suddenly focused on her, the girl grew agitated. She threw herself at my parents' feet and sobbed, "Dad, Mom, I finally found you. Even though I've suffered all these years, struggling just to get by and barely having enough to eat, it was all worth it. Our family is finally reunited." Excitement surged through the comments again. Here it is, the classic recognition scene. The female lead is so pitiful. She's maxing out her parents' sympathy instantly. I can't wait for the parents to take it out on the fake daughter. She's been living in someone else's place all these years. The girl wiped her tears and looked up expectantly, but my parents remained oddly calm, even a little awkward. Dad looked especially uncomfortable and turned his face away. "Miss, calm down for a moment." The girl looked completely baffled, unable to understand why things were unfolding this way. I took it all in and nearly failed to hold back my laughter. Over the years, I had hired no fewer than 100 actors, running through thousands of familiar fiction cliches. The recognition plot alone had been staged nearly 100 times. The first time they saw it, my parents were so moved they cried, wishing they could give their hearts to the real daughter. The second time, they felt deep regret and swore to make it up to their biological child. By the 99th time, all that remained on their faces was numbness. They even begged me in their dreams to switch to a different storyline. Since it involved questions of parentage, my parents immediately called in professionals to run a full paternity verification process. The girl's name was Tanya Lockman. It turned out she truly was their biological daughter who had been switched at birth by a nurse. After the truth was verified, my parents clustered around her anxiously and instructed the staff to set up a room for her. Tanya saw that I hadn't moved from my spot. She made a show of rubbing her eyes until they turned red. "Faye grew up by your side, living in luxury and receiving the best education. I'm just a plain, shabby country girl. How could I possibly deserve to live in the same room as Faye?" A hint of self-deprecation lingered in her eyes. "I know I don't deserve it. I'd be grateful just to have a storage room to live in." The comment section immediately softened with sympathy. This imposter has no shame at all. Now that the rightful daughter has returned, she's still hanging on. Tanya is smart. She's playing the long game. The parents will soon become fed up with the imposter and sympathize even more with Tanya. I looked at Tanya in confusion, and then I pointed at myself. Me, living in luxury? Dad shot Tanya a strange look. Faye grew up with her grandparents in the countryside. She went to boarding school through middle and high school, and she also attended winter and summer camps. She only returned home in recent years, so her living standards likely weren't any better than yours. The sympathy in Mom's eyes was instantly replaced with confusion. "What are you talking about, dear?" Tanya's face turned ashen. She stammered, unable to form a coherent response. I turned off my phone screen with a faint smile, crediting the 999 fictional tales about rightful and imposter heiresses I had read. I had come to understand one thing very clearly. The more lavishly the real daughter lived, the stronger the public backlash became when compared to the fake daughter. Because of that, I had never allowed myself to indulge over the years. Instead, I poured every resource into improving myself. Tanya tried to win sympathy by playing the pitiful victim, but I had already completely cut off that path for her. Tears welled up in Tanya's eyes as she quietly followed behind me. Right when Dad brought up my recent internship at the company, Tanya suddenly interrupted in tears. "I'm so envious that Faye gets to shine at the company. Unlike me, I'm so useless I can't even help with anything." Dad was an entrepreneur who built everything from scratch, and his greatest wish was for his children to be capable enough to protect what he had created. Seeing how thoughtful Tanya was being, he quickly reassured her, "You and Faye are both good kids. If you want, you can start an internship at the company tomorrow to gain experience." Tanya's eyes brightened for a moment before she lowered her gaze again. "I don't have a degree," she said, sounding dejected. "I don't even have any shares to establish authority with the staff. I probably wouldn't be able to handle it." The moment I heard the word shares, my guard went up. In every one of those stories, the parents would leave a share of the company to the imposter daughter, but she wouldn't receive it until she turned 18 years old. I was no different. My 18th birthday was still a month away. Dad froze, and a conflicted expression crossed his face. Just as he was about to speak, Tanya beat him to it. She looked cautious, almost timid. Dad, you don't have to give me much. Just a small portion of shares will do. I'm not trying to compete with Faye. I just want a little more confidence when I work at the company. The comment section instantly erupted in cheers. Exactly. Take the shares back. Why should they go to that thief? I bet the parents had nothing left to say. After all, the shares had belonged to Tanya. The fake heiress was probably fuming by now. A multi-million-dollar stake had just slipped through her fingers. Under Tanya's expectant gaze, Dad scratched his head awkwardly. It's not that we're refusing to give it to you. It's just that the shares have already been transferred into Faye's name. We can't change it. Tanya let out a sharp shriek, almost losing her composure entirely. She's not even 18 years old yet. How could the shares already be transferred into her name? I exhaled softly in relief, silently applauding my own paranoia. Due to my fear that I would be kicked out, left penniless, and starving on the streets, I cried and made a scene, begging my parents to change the age on the documents from 18 to 8. I could only feel at ease once I was sure the money was mine. Precisely for that reason, Dad had not brought up sending me away since the moment Tanya showed up. She could replace me if she wanted, but once my money was involved, I was more guarded than anyone. Tanya was furious. Nothing was unfolding according to the script she had planned. Still, if she didn't stir up chaos, she would fail to live up to her role as the scheming female lead. As we went upstairs, she intentionally stayed right beside me. The moment I stepped onto the second floor, she suddenly fell backward. Her eyes widened in shock and fear as she looked up at me. Faye, why did you push me? At that moment, I understood Tanya's intention. She wanted to frame me, making it look like I had pushed her down the stairs so my parents would see me as a vicious person. The live comments also started celebrating too soon. Tanya knew there were cameras in the villa, but she deliberately chose a blind spot to fall down the stairs. Now, the fake heiress has no way to defend herself. I watched the scene expressionlessly and then pressed the button beside the staircase. The next second, Tanya, who should have slammed hard onto the ground, was launched into the air, forming a graceful arc instead. Her smug expression instantly cracked. Wait, who installs a trampoline under their own staircase? Normal people would not, but I had paranoia. Places like staircases were high-risk zones for framing incidents. How could I not prepare for that? After countless rehearsals with hired actors, I installed a full-coverage safety trampoline system. With just a press of a button, it deployed in 0.01 seconds. Mom rushed over when she heard the noise. Tanya, what happened? Tanya's eyes darted around with a calculating glint. Just as she was about to spin another lie, she saw me pull a small surveillance device from my collar and casually play with it in my hand. Even if there were blind spots in the cameras, I had nothing to fear. I carried my own portable monitoring device with me. Tanya's face instantly went pale. She stared at me like she had seen a ghost and shook her head frantically. I'm fine, Mom. I only slipped. Luckily, Faye's trampoline caught me. After that incident, Tanya stayed unusually quiet for quite a while. She started to feel like something was haunting her, as if every move she made was known by me. At home, she avoided me like the plague, terrified of getting caught in something again. Eventually, her school transfer application was approved. On the day we went to school together, she looked like she had been reborn. As she got out of the car, she leaned close to my ear and whispered in an eerie tone, Faye Lockman, if your classmates found out you're just a fake heiress who has been lying to them all along, I wonder what they would think of you. The comment section came alive again. Tanya is pretty cunning. She can't get the upper hand at home, so she's shifting the battlefield to the school instead. Tanya is amazing at manipulating public opinion. Back in middle school, she drove someone who bullied her to the point of dropping out. The fake heiress is done for. They chatted away, discussing my tragic downfall. I said nothing and simply walked toward the classroom with my backpack. When it was time for self-introduction, Tanya shot me a smug glance and then turned to the class, smiling sweetly. Hello, everyone. My name is Tanya Lockman. You might be wondering why I share the same surname as the Lockman family's heiress, Faye. She stretched her words out, milking the suspense for all it was worth as she savored the look of torment on my face. That's because I'm the real daughter the Lockman family just found. Faye is nothing but a fake heiress who has been living under my identity for 18 years. Tanya ended her words with a confident smile. However, the students exchanged confused glances.
This isn't how these stories go. Meanwhile, I quietly took my seat. Most of my classmates had known me for years. They knew I consistently ranked near the top of the grade. Knew I organized charity drives. Knew I tutored weaker students before exams. Knew I never pulled rank using my family's wealth. Compared to 18 years of actual interaction, a blood test meant very little. At lunch, Tanya tried again. She sat in the cafeteria looking lonely and vulnerable. When people approached, she sighed softly. I don't blame Faye. I know none of this was her fault. But sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if we hadn't been switched. Several students nodded sympathetically. Finally, the reaction she wanted. Then one boy asked, so what are your plans now? Tanya brightened. I'm still adjusting. What about college? I haven't thought about it. What about internships? I'm not sure. What subjects are you good at? Tanya froze. The conversation died immediately. The students exchanged awkward looks before leaving. Sympathy only lasted a few minutes. People respected competence far more. That afternoon, Tanya followed me home looking irritated. The moment we entered the villa, she slammed her bedroom door. A few days later, another opportunity arrived. Dad announced that the company would be holding a major shareholders meeting. Many executives and business partners would attend. Tanya's eyes lit up instantly. This was the perfect stage. That evening she approached my parents with red eyes. Dad, I'm worried everyone will think I only came back for money. Dad sighed. Nobody thinks that. I know. She lowered her head. But if people keep calling me the real daughter, while Faye keeps representing the family. Her voice trembled. It'll feel like I don't belong. Mom immediately softened. Tanya secretly smiled. This time she had chosen the perfect angle. Identity. Belonging. Recognition. Surely it would work. After a long silence, Dad nodded. You're right. Tanya nearly laughed. Finally. Then Dad continued. You should represent the family together. Tanya's smile widened. But before she could celebrate, Dad added. You can introduce yourself as our biological daughter. And Faye can introduce herself as our daughter. The room became silent. Tanya stared. What? Dad looked confused. You are our biological daughter. Faye is also our daughter. Isn't that accurate? The smile disappeared from Tanya's face. For the first time since arriving, she realized something terrifying. The enemy she had prepared for never existed. My parents weren't choosing between us. They genuinely intended to keep both daughters. Every strategy she had prepared relied on creating conflict. But every time she pushed, nobody pushed back. It was like punching water. No matter how hard she tried to start a war, the family simply refused to fight. And that made her far more uncomfortable than any enemy ever could. That night, I found her standing alone on the balcony. She stared at me for a long time. Then she suddenly asked, Are you really not afraid? Of what? That one day they'll choose me. I looked at her strangely. Why would they? Because you're the fake daughter. I thought for a moment, then shrugged. If they wanted to abandon me, they would have done it the day they found you. Tanya went silent. The truth is, I continued, I've spent 18 years preparing to be kicked out. My emergency savings could support me for decades. I own shares. I have investment accounts. I have multiple degrees. I have backup housing. I have 3 separate career plans. And enough evidence to blackmail. I paused. Legally negotiate with. Tanya stared at me in horror. I corrected myself. Legally negotiate with several people. Her mouth twitched. You're insane, probably. For the first time, neither of us spoke. A long while later, Tanya quietly asked, Then what have I been fighting for? I glanced at her. The confident smile she always wore was gone. The scheming expressions were gone too. All that remained was an 18-year-old girl who had spent her whole life imagining that one day she would return and reclaim everything she lost, only to discover there was no throne to seize, no villain to defeat, no battle waiting for her, just a family trying awkwardly to make room for her, and a paranoid sister who had accidentally prepared for every possible betrayal, including the one that never came. For the next few weeks, Tanya became strangely quiet. Not the fake kind of quiet she used when trying to gain sympathy. Actually quiet. She stopped dropping hints about shares, stopped bringing up who was the real daughter, stopped making dramatic comments whenever relatives visited. The change was so sudden that even Mom became worried. Did we accidentally hurt her feelings? Dad scratched his head. I don't think so. Meanwhile, I was far more suspicious. People did not change overnight. Especially not after spending weeks trying to start trouble. Something was definitely brewing. So naturally, I increased surveillance. I installed 3 additional cameras near the garden, added 2 voice recorders in common areas, placed emergency backup batteries in every monitoring device, and created a spreadsheet labeled Potential Tanya Schemes version 47. A month passed. Nothing happened. 2 months passed. Still nothing. I began losing sleep. This was even more terrifying than being framed. At least when people were scheming, their motives were clear. One evening, I finally cornered Tanya in the kitchen. What are you planning? She looked up from a bowl of fruit. What? What are you planning? Nothing. Impossible. She sighed. I'm literally eating grapes. That's exactly what someone plotting something would say. Tanya stared at me. I stared back. After a long silence, she burst out laughing. Actually laughing. The kind that made it hard to breathe. I narrowed my eyes. What's funny? You. That's rude. No, seriously. She wiped tears from her eyes. You've spent your whole life preparing for disasters. Because disasters happen. But do they happen every day? They might. She laughed even harder. For some reason, that irritated me. Yet at the same time, it was the first genuine smile I had ever seen from her. A few days later, the annual shareholders meeting arrived. As expected, many executives attended. Several distant relatives were there too. The moment Tanya appeared beside my parents, whispers spread through the room. That's the biological daughter. The one who was switched at birth. I heard she only recently came back. Tanya's shoulders stiffened. I noticed immediately. For all her confidence at home, this was unfamiliar territory. Hundreds of eyes were watching her, judging her, evaluating her. Then one elderly shareholder approached. He looked at Tanya and smiled. You must be Tanya. She nodded nervously. The old man continued. Your father talks about you often. Tanya blinked. He does. Of course. The man chuckled. Every parent likes bragging about their children. Another executive walked over. Then another. One after another, they greeted her warmly. Not because she was the biological daughter. Not because she had reclaimed her identity. But because she was part of the family. I watched the confusion on her face. For years she had imagined this moment. Yet reality looked nothing like the stories she had built in her head. Near the end of the event, Dad stepped onto the stage. He gave a brief speech about the company's future. Then he suddenly smiled. Before we conclude, I'd like to introduce 2 people. My instincts immediately activated. Public introductions. Family members. Large audience. Potential emotional event. Danger level, moderate. Dad waved us forward. I reluctantly stood. Tanya looked equally confused. The audience applauded as we joined him. Dad placed a hand on each of our shoulders. This is Tanya. My biological daughter. More applause followed. Tanya looked stunned. Then Dad turned toward me. And this is Faye. My daughter. The applause became even louder. No qualifications. No explanations. No distinctions. Just daughter. I noticed Tanya's eyes reddening. For the first time, she didn't seem upset. She seemed relieved. After the event ended, she disappeared. Mom panicked. Dad started calling her phone. Naturally, I activated emergency search protocols. Within 15 minutes, I located her sitting alone behind the building. She was crying. Not dramatic crying. Not manipulative crying. Just quietly crying. When she noticed me, she immediately turned away. Don't look. I wasn't planning to. You absolutely were. Fair. We sat there in silence. Eventually she spoke. You know something? What? I spent 18 years hating you. I didn't respond. I thought you stole everything from me. She laughed weakly. But when I got here, she looked toward the city lights. You were even more scared than I was. I considered that. That's true. You prepared escape plans. Correct. Emergency funds. Correct. Backup housing. Correct. 3 careers. 5 now. Tanya shook her head. You're ridiculous. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment. It sounded like one. A cool breeze passed between us. Then Tanya suddenly asked. Faye. If one day I really tried to take everything from you, I thought about it seriously. Then I'd activate contingency plan 72. Her face froze. You actually numbered them? Obviously. How many contingency plans do you have? I hesitated. 89. Tanya covered her face. Oh my god. And 72 is only the first anti-sister protocol. She groaned. For several seconds she simply sat there. Then she started laughing again. And this time, I found myself laughing too. Neither of us noticed that from a nearby window, Mom and Dad were watching. Mom quietly wiped away tears. Dad smiled. After all the chaos, all the paranoia, all the misunderstandings and schemes, the thing they had wanted most from the beginning was finally happening. Their 2 daughters were starting to become sisters. Even if one of those sisters had 89 contingency plans prepared just in case. The months that followed were surprisingly peaceful. Not perfect. Just peaceful. Which for me was somehow more suspicious. I kept waiting for the next plot twist. A long-lost brother. A forged will. A secret engagement. A terminal illness. A company takeover. Anything. Nothing happened. Life simply continued. Tanya settled into school, then into an internship at the company. She worked hard. Sometimes harder than anyone else. Perhaps because she spent 18 years believing she had to fight for everything. Slowly, people stopped referring to her as the real daughter. They stopped calling me the fake daughter. We became simply Tanya and Faye. One evening, nearly a year after her arrival, Dad called us into his study. Mom was there too. Both of them looked unusually serious. My instincts immediately screamed. Danger. Family meeting. Serious expressions. Probability of life-changing announcement. 97%. I discreetly opened the emergency notes app on my phone. Dad cleared his throat. There's something we've been meaning to tell you. I mentally reviewed contingency plans 1 through 89. Mom smiled helplessly. Faye, put your phone away. I reluctantly obeyed. Dad looked at us for a long moment. Then he said quietly, when Tanya first came home, your mother and I were terrified. Tanya blinked. Terrified. Dad nodded. We were afraid we'd lose both daughters. Neither of us spoke. Mom continued softly. We worried Tanya would resent us. We worried Faye would feel abandoned. We worried everyone would get hurt. Her eyes grew red. But somehow, she laughed. Despite all the chaos, everything worked out. Tanya lowered her head. I stared at the floor. For once, neither of us had a sarcastic response ready. Dad opened a folder and pushed it toward us. Inside were legal documents. My heart skipped. Documents. The natural enemy of every web novel character. Dad sighed. These are the final revisions to our estate plan. Tanya froze. I froze. Dad looked exhausted. I know what you're both thinking. We're not choosing one daughter over the other. Mom nodded. You're both our children. That has never changed. The documents reflected exactly that. Fair. Clear. Simple. No hidden conditions. No surprise clauses. No dramatic reveal. Just 2 parents making sure both of their daughters would be protected. Tanya suddenly started crying. Mom immediately hugged her. A moment later, she pulled me into the hug too. I resisted for approximately 3 seconds. Then gave up. Dad joined in awkwardly. The 4 of us stood there together. And for the first time since Tanya appeared at our door, nobody seemed afraid. Not Tanya. Not my parents. Not even me. Well, mostly not me. That night, I returned to my room. I opened the massive folder on my computer labeled Anti-Betrayal Master Archive. Inside were years of preparations, escape plans, evidence files, emergency contacts, financial contingencies, 89 numbered disaster scenarios. I stared at them for a long time. Then I clicked one button. Archive. The folder disappeared into long-term storage. Not deleted. I'm not insane. Just cautious. As I closed my laptop, my phone buzzed. A message from Tanya. Tanya, are you asleep? No. Tanya, I saw your contingency plan list. I sat upright. Meow. Tanya. Plan 43 was saved on the family printer. I nearly stopped breathing. Me, that was classified. Tanya. Why does Plan 72 involve 3 lawyers, a private investigator, and a goat? Me. Operational security. Tanya. That's not an answer. Me, you'll never know. A few seconds later, another message arrived. Tanya. Thanks for not hating me. I stared at the screen. After a while, I typed back. Me. Thanks for not pushing me down the stairs. 3 dots appeared. Then. Tanya. There was a trampoline. Me, good point. Another pause. Then her final message arrived. Tanya. Good night, sister. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. For 18 years, I had prepared for the day I would lose everything. For the day the real daughter would return. For the day I would be abandoned. I had planned for every ending except this one. Slowly I smiled. Then typed back. Me, good night, sister. And for the first time in my life, I went to sleep without creating a backup plan.